All right. Sabres are the only show in town. Time to get things rolling. For the Bandits are here too. There is a trade rumor involving the Sabres, and I might hazard to say the juiciest trade rumor in a long time involving the Buffalo Sabres. We'll talk about Elias Pettersson yet again with some more juice this time coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? And thanks for making this Monday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch us on our YouTube channel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. Sorry, Bills fans. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. I'm going to need that app. I'm going to need FanDuel to help get me through that Super Bowl because, of course, I'll be watching. Go to a Super Bowl party, and I'm going to want to be interested, but I kind of dislike both teams, and I definitely dislike one more than the other, I know, but FanDuel is going to be a godsend coming up for me on Super Bowl Sunday. Sneaky Joe DiBiase, welcome in to Sabre season, post-Buffalo Bills season. They lost to the Chiefs again, and it's a very somber morning for sports fans here in Buffalo, New York, of course. And it is taking up most of our attention, the end of the season and the incoming off season. And it will be a post-mortem on the Bills for a few days. But I do believe that the attention for the Buffalo Sabres is going to go up a little bit. There are some fans, that will, all right, Bills are done after a week. Maybe they'll go, hey, what's going on with the Sabres? Where are you in the standings? Dead last. Like some might want to pay attention. And we'll get to a lot today. Elias Pettersson is on the mind. A big rumor about Pettersson from the biggest of sources this week. And I am very excited about the confirmation, it seems to me, that the Sabres they are in on it, at least. And not, just, oh, no, they're not really, they've called, but that, more than that. We'll get to that coming up shortly on today's show. And, if we go back on the schedule for the Sabres, the game against Edmonton, very quickly, just one of these games where they were great and they don't win anyway. The Sabres had a lot of games this year where they don't outplay their opponent, of course. They get outplayed more often. In this game, they were great, created a ton of chances. They had the third, I believe it's the third highest expected goals for total in a single Sabre game since 2007, which is when they started with those numbers. So they were great. They generated a ton of chances. How do you lose a game like that? Well, the guys getting your chances, they're second-rate goal scorers, and that's what the Sabres roster is filled with. So, yeah, you can have a night like that when you have a roster like this of, oh, we got a bunch of chances, but our guys didn't finish. Well, yeah. You don't have a lot of natural elite goal scorers other than like Tage Thompson. So that's the story of the game. Jeff Skinner scores against his former team. He didn't play a lot. He was in the top 6, but no Connor McDavid in the top 6. So, kind of counts. But he scored a goal in 10 minutes of ice time. He's been down the depth chart there. So good for him. I'm always rooting for Jeff Skinner. I want him to produce enough this year so that the Oilers keep him on the roster and play him in the playoffs, because that dude is the only person in hockey with a longer playoff drought than a Buffalo Sabre fan. So rooting for Skinner to get into the postseason this year. He gets the goal on Saturday against his former team. 39 of 41 saves from Stuart Skinner. Brutal afternoon for the Sabres to lose that hockey game. So we'll get to Pettersson here. And Jordan Greenway, there's an update on him, and I want to kind of preview the rest of his season because I think he's an interesting player. But before we do any of that, I just someday I think fans someday, what they need from the Buffalo Sabres at a minimum is be a stress relief or a distraction for Bills fans after the season ends. If it doesn't end in a Super Bowl, and none of them have, and most won't, even if they do win one someday, most won't end in a Super Bowl. So you're going to have these heartbreaking ends of seasons. And it would be nice if one of these years, when the Bills lose in the playoffs, if after a week, it wasn't just, well, I guess we have the draft in May or in April, the NFL draft in April. Like, that's been a lot of the Buffalo sports experience in the past couple of years. The Sabres' minimum obligation to the average Buffalo sports fan, in my opinion, is be there for them, to give them a big old hug after the Bills season ends and says, hey, put your head on my shoulder. It's all right. Mourn for a week. And we got you. We got you. We got an interesting season here. We've got a fun team. We've got a fun season. We're in a playoff race. Maybe we're in a playoff spot. The Sabres got to do that for fans at some point. And they haven't. They haven't. One time in the last 14 years, they've done that, really, where they've been alive when the Bills season ends, right? Like 2 years ago. That's kind of it. There's no other year where they've been there for the average fan after the football season ends. Brutal. So let's get right into it, though, with Elias Pettersson. We have talked about him multiple times on this show. And you can check out those episodes wherever you're listening to this podcast if you want more in depth, but we'll get into it again here. And the reason that we're firing it back up is because there was a very interesting nugget from Elliotte Friedman on Sportsnet over the weekend. And he followed that up with a radio interview where he kind of doubled down on it. Friedman said when on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday, I think while speaking about Pettersson, that he knows the Sabres are in on Pettersson. It was the only team he mentioned. And the logo was on the screen, and like that part of that report of him doing his insider whatever was Sabres are in on Pettersson. That was the point of him going out in front of the camera. And he said they're one of many teams that have called, but he's like, I think the Sabres are in there, is what Friedman said. And that, by the way, got misquoted a little bit. It got misquoted on Twitter, as it tends to happen, to the Sabres are the favorites to land Pettersson. He did not say that. So keep that in mind. I'll also say, though, they might be the favorites, right? While Friedman did not say the Sabres are the favorites, him getting in front of the camera and mentioning the Sabres by name and nobody else tells me the Sabres are serious about this deal and that it's possible. And it should be. We've gone over this, but there is no excuse for the Sabres to not have the best offer for Elias Pettersson. He has no trade protection until the summer. It is a shooting star across the sky, the white whale. This doesn't happen. This does not happen. If you miss this opportunity, it might be 5 more years before you get a player of this caliber that becomes available without any trade protection. You got to go all in on it. You might not get it done, and maybe somebody beats your offer with a player that you can't compete with, and then there's just what are you supposed to do? But you got to be in on it. And I was very happy to hear that report signifying they're in it and they are serious about it. They want to get it done, is how that sounded to me. So Friedman then goes on a radio show in Vancouver and gets asked to kind of follow up on it. And he, quote, this is on Sunday, so the next day, quote, I think those talks continue. I believe that one of the teams that has really shown a lot of interest is Buffalo. There are others, but Buffalo is definitely in there. Sorry, that's the Saturday quote. This is the Sunday quote. Do I think the Canucks have talked to Buffalo? Yeah, I do. Do I think the Sabres have talked to the Canucks? Yeah, I do. Then Donnie and Dolly in Czech, I think that's in Vancouver, asked him about this. They asked him about the Friedman idea from earlier in the year that we've also talked about of Dylan Cozens and Bo Byram for Elias Pettersson. They asked Friedman about that exact package. And what Friedman said is, do I think that's the exact combination that they've talked about? No, I don't know that. But later added, I could see Vancouver being interested in those players, and I could see Buffalo being interested in Pettersson. So he's doing a dance here, right? He doesn't want to tell you, and he doesn't want to tell you that that's the exact package. But at the same time, he continues to hint at it, right? He doesn't, he's not as strong on, I have no idea. Like, he does say, I don't know, but then to follow up with, I could see Vancouver in this, and I could see, I don't know. Like, he's not being as strong about it. I know I'm trying to guess and predict the motivations and exact language of Elliotte Friedman. I understand it, but listen, the hockey world, one of the fun parts of the hockey world is trading, is the marketplace, deals. And this is the dude. This is the number one insider guy. So I feel like he knows. I feel like he, of course, knows, as all these insider guys do, a lot of information that they can't yet run with in the public sphere. And you tend to, I like to look for signs or leakage of, oh, what did you mean by that? Did you just kind of let something slip and you kind of want to tell us that that's what's happening, but you really can't fully, that's where I'm playing the guessing game here. But Byram and Cozens for Pettersson, I still am skeptical that gets the job done, because I just think you're leaving yourself vulnerable if you're the Sabres to have that offer be beaten. I think someone can beat Byram and Cozens. It's a good package, no doubt, but I think someone desperate can beat it. There are other teams in the league, by the way, that have trouble attracting players. Columbus is one of these, and Columbus is good this year. The Blue Jackets are in a playoff spot, and they might think, man, we bring in Pettersson, first line center. He's under contract forever. Like, that's a city and a team that finds themselves on a lot of no trade clauses. They might be thinking the same thing the Sabres are. They can beat Byram and Cozens if they want. But if you really want to make it almost impossible to beat, there's two players that I wonder have to be in the mix. So beyond Byram and Cozens as an offer, let's talk about Owen Power, and let's talk a little bit about Zach Benson as in the totality, though, of all of this, and who else could be involved. Pettersson following up on it, Friedman talking about it. It's exciting times. Well, not really exciting times to be a Sabre fan, but we are in a pocket of days here where we can feel like a big trade for the best player in a deal, a star player, is possible, and that's a rarity. It is rare that we're allowed to spend any time realistically thinking they're about to make a giant move. And I'm allowing myself to get a little excited because it's rare and it doesn't happen all that often. I'm allowing myself to get a little excited about Pettersson. We'll talk more about it when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and you can definitely add some rooting interest and some motivation for this game if you need it. A lot of Buffalo fans are going to. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook, whether it's predicting who's going to have the first touchdown or calling the MVP or even betting on the coin toss or the national anthem. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds. Feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We're talking again about Elias Pettersson as we enter another week of Sabre action. They have a 4-game homestand upcoming that begins with the Bruins tomorrow night. It'll be a 7 o'clock puck drop at KeyBank Center. Then they go Nashville on Friday, New Jersey on Sunday, Columbus the following Tuesday. But let's get into some trade stuff as Pettersson is back in the news and attached to the Buffalo Sabres. Friedman and those interviewing him continue to throw out the idea of Cozens and Byram being the two names. And there's good reason for that. And I would say right now, just trusting in, that. And when you make sense of it, contracts and where guys are from even, Cozens and Byram does seem like the most realistic core of a package. I think there would have to be more around it. Maybe there's a valuable pick. Maybe there's a prospect. Maybe both of those things. But you've got Byram, who is in the final year of his deal, right? He is an RFA after the year, and he'll have some leverage when he hits restricted free agency. And you have a player that I don't know what he thinks about it here right now, but I'm just going to take a wild guess and think he's very frustrated to be on a team that's this bad, especially coming from a loaded team in Colorado where he won the Stanley Cup and he was an important part of winning the Stanley Cup. He goes from that to worst team in the league, worst vibes in the league, worst building in the league, like everything, right? Vancouver is not some dynasty he would be going to, but it is more competitive. And it is easier to see, I think, winning right now as a Vancouver Canuck than it would be as a Buffalo Sabre. So I could see Byram having interest in going out west again, this time to Vancouver. And Byram, by the way, is from Cranbrook, British Columbia, which I believe is, I had it. It's a few hours away from Vancouver. I believe I'll get the exact destination, but it's in British Columbia. So you're much, much closer to home. He's local, and he does kind of fit the roster. They don't have another top defenseman that's offensive like that. The Sabres have a couple with Power and Dahlin, so Byram would make sense. And then Cozens, now no place in Canada is close to Whitehorse. It's like 20 hours away from Vancouver. It's crazy how far away it is. But Vancouver is, 90% closer than Buffalo is. And Cozens would have played his junior hockey out there. I believe he actually lived in Vancouver when he was playing in Whitehorse as a kid. Junior hockey, you can only get so good. So at some point, he moves to Abbotsford, which again, British Columbia, all these places are not like right next to each other, I know, but you're all in the same province. You're a lot closer than here. So both guys, much more local, right, than they are here, from the Western Canada. And Cozens kind of fits too, because they would have to get a center back in return if they're trading Pettersson. I think they might move JT Miller to center full time if they were to move Pettersson, and then maybe Cozens fills in with some depth down the middle as well. So I think it makes sense that they would want Cozens. The value part is where I struggle. Now, there's two other names that I want to bring up about Pettersson, and Sabre fans, you tell me if you think that this is a bridge too far for this deal, for this player, who's a great player, 100-point player, great center. Sure. I know the tweets. I've seen him. Another soft European guy. The stigma, to me, it carries such a negative connotation that I don't even think is fully accurate. I don't care. I don't care. I want the best player in the deal. I want a guy playing center, another forward on this roster that is capable of getting 100 points, right? That's what I want. There's not enough talent on the top of this roster. He would do that. Thompson's great. Pettersson would replace Eichel. He really would. Yet Eichel's better. Right now, at least he is. There have been seasons where Pettersson's been better. But this is your Eichel replacement. And he's under contract for a long time. Maybe a different dynamic. Maybe him and Dahlin. I don't know. Whatever it is. I like the idea a lot. What if it took Owen Power or Zach Benson? That's my question to fans. Because it might. if you want to have the best offer, and there are 3-4 other teams out there that are really desperate to make this move like the Sabres would be, they really want to get it done, then how do you beat that offer? Another elite offer. How do you beat it? Owen Power's way to do it. Owen Power's way to do it. First overall pick. He's struggled a little bit this season, especially in his own end. I think he's been better than maybe past years, but still not all the way there at all. Offensive impact, though, is still very good. And fans, he's not a fan favorite because he's a big guy that doesn't play physical at all. And you're in Vancouver, same thing would happen. He could have a positive impact with the Canucks, and I guarantee you those fans there who are also hardcore are going to get on him quickly about that. I just think it's a thing with Owen Power. It doesn't even have to be meaningful. It's an automatic, I think, wherever he would go, in a fan base that's rabid about hockey. So Power, for me, not a bridge too far. I don't know that there really is a bridge too far for me. Maybe Dahlin, but Power is not a bridge too far for me. I wonder about Benson. And I asked fans in our chat, our group chat, text club, you can join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. What if it took Benson? What if they insisted you got to have Benson in the deal? Maybe Benson instead of Cozens or whatever. You got to have Zach Benson in the deal. Benson, by the way, also a WHL guy. What if that was the name? Because he would garner value, right? Like, if you want to outbid everybody, well, you've got this 19-year-old kid who's got an elite hockey IQ that has made the league far sooner than anybody would have predicted. And if you got an analytics department, I don't know if Vancouver has one of the more robust ones or not, actually. But if you have one, they're going to tell you how good Benson is because every number this year is like, oh, he's one of the best players on the Sabres. He's always got the puck. His team always has the puck when he's on the ice. They generate shots, they generate chances, and the opponent doesn't. And he penalty kills and the lot of it. But he also doesn't carry right now an elite offensive ceiling. Maybe he turns into that. Maybe he develops into that, but he hasn't showed it yet. So that would be where the Sabres would cash in and say, all right, we could look dumb here because he could become an amazing player. It's also possible he just becomes a really good player, and we'd be getting an amazing player back in return. So Benson is just a name I wanted to throw out there because 19 years old, if you want to outbid everybody, that's the type of guy thrown in with another valuable piece that could get you over the top. And that would be an overpayment to me. But I just think if you want Pettersson as a Sabres fan, you got to come to grips with the no trade protection, meaning you have to overpay, or else you're just not getting him. And that's fine. If you don't want to overpay, you don't want Elias Pettersson. But I think you have to overpay if you want a shot at this guy. And I would be willing to. If you told me right now it's Byram and it's Benson, I'd have to swallow really hard because I love both of those players a lot. But I think I'd do it. I want the Sabres to make a trade where they get the best player in the deal. Almost at any cost. Almost. If you told me to throw like an unprotected first in with Benson and Byram, that might be my breaking point. But I would be pretty desperate if I were the Sabres to get this guy in town and get the deal done. When we come back, Jordan Greenway on his way back to practice soon. When he comes back, next couple months will be interesting for him. Contract stuff. I want to get to a little bit on Greenway when we return here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. In post-Bills life, we've got the Sabres and we've got the Bandits coming up. And golf is returning. Masters ain't far away, but hey, can the Sabres give us anything interesting? It's not looking good, but maybe they'll turn it around. Anyways, Jordan Greenway, positive update from Lindy Ruff today. Lindy says that Greenway is getting really close, or he said he will be returning to practice soon for the Buffalo Sabres. And that's a great sign because he's had a very good year. When he's been on the ice and he's dealt with some injuries, he's been very good. I would say the player this year that I've been the most wrong about, unless you want to say Devin Levi, because I really thought Levi was going to take a big step this year in the NHL. Those might be my top two. Greenway, I mean, I was just like, I wanted him as a healthy scratch at the beginning of the year. And when he's been on the ice, he's been one of the Sabres' best 5 forwards, probably. He's been physical. He's actually chipped in offensively. He's looked a little dangerous when him, McLeod, and Zucker were together. That line was great. So, and defensively, he's been great. So I'm very excited to get Greenway back whenever that happens. Again, he'll rejoin the team soon. The thing that's interesting about Greenway is between now and the deadline in about a month or a month and change, what are they going to do with him? Because we've talked about Zucker and the candidacy of him being a deadline guy if he doesn't want to sign an extension with the Sabres. Greenway is a UFA at the end of the year too. And that's another one. What do the Sabres want to do with Jordan Greenway? Do they want to extend Jordan Greenway? Is Greenway interested in staying here long-term, or does he want to go to a better organization? If the Sabres could get anything at the deadline, what would it even be? I mean, he has only played 20 games and has 7 points. It's not like he's lit the world on fire with the numbers. You really have to get into the film and watch him to see how good he's been this season, I think. I don't know what you'd get. Would you get the second round pick that you traded to get him, back in 22, 23? I think you should be able to, but would you want to even do that? I think right now, I would want to see him sign an extension. 3-year deal, not crazy money, $3.5-4 million per year. Keep him on the third line. He's a solid, right now, he's a solid bottom 6 NHL player that penalty kills, and he's physical. I'm in. As long as the price isn't exorbitant, I am good seeing Greenway signed to a couple of year extension that's something for a price that's not out of this world. So excited to see him back, and I'm very curious to see what happens with him in the next month and a half with the Sabres and the deadline and a potential extension. Some breaking news while I'm recording here on the show. Nicholas Aube-Kubel, not Pettersson, nothing like major. Nicholas Aube-Kubel placed on waivers by the Buffalo Sabres. I liked him at the beginning of the year, but yeah, he's just a fourth liner. That's all it is. So no harm to me in losing him potentially if he gets claimed. But we'll see what happens. That means Tyson Kozak has impressed too, by the way, fourth line wise, if they're willing to lose him for nothing. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Shoot us a text. Let us know what you think. Would you like to see a Cozens Byram package for Pettersson? Are you okay with a Power package or Zach Benson if those guys were to be involved? Let me know where your head's at currently with this player and what it should cost to get him. That'll do it for us. Sabres and Bruins tomorrow. We'll talk more about the matchup when we return here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Talk to you tomorrow. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.